They did not let him speak in his own defense. The trial was nothing more than a performance for the alien council. The great chamber was full of cold eyes. Most of them not human, each one already certain of his guilt. Captain Rion stood in the center. Under the harsh white light, surrounded by guards whose hands never left their weapons, the charges were read out slowly so every world connected to the broadcast could hear treason aiding an enemy fleet and betrayal of the coalition. The words were poison. He had no proof to fight back, no witness to speak for him, only the heavy truth in his chest that none of this was real. They wanted him gone, and this was the fastest way he could feel the judgment before it was spoken. A ripple of satisfaction passed through the council members as the lead judge, an insectoid creature with eyes like black stones, gave the sentence silent. Exile in the void, no return, no rescue. A death without a grave. The humans in the chamber lowered their eyes, while the alien rulers showed no shame. The guards seized him without hesitation and marched him through the long metal corridors toward the dock. He did not fight them, not yet. Fighting now would mean dying here in front of them, and he was not ready for that. The docking bay was silent, except for the hum of the air recyclers. Rion's ship, his command for the last 5 years, sat locked in place, stripped of its crew. The coalition had made sure no one loyal to him remained. The vessel was not a warship. Now it was nothing more than a coffin. They threw him inside without ceremony, sealing the doors with a hiss. His wrists were still bound. The view from the small window showed only the glitter of distant stars. Cold and endless, he thought of Earth far behind him and the faces of people who would never know what truly happened. Then the clamps released, and the ship drifted out into the black. The engines were cut, the life support set to minimal, a slow death by air loss and freezing cold. The silence inside the cabin was crushing. Every small creak of metal sounded like a scream. He unbound his wrists, using the sharp edge of a broken panel, but it did not change the truth. He had no weapons, no allies, no control of the ship, no way to send a message. The coalition had made sure of that. They had left him to fade into the dark hours past, or maybe days. He had no way to tell. Hunger gnawed at him, but worse was the thirst. The water system had been locked out from his control. He tried to force open the supply hatch, but it was sealed. His breath fogged in the cold air. The stars outside did not move. The ship was drifting somewhere between asteroid belts, maybe already far beyond any patrol routes. His mind wandered to the faces of the counselors who had condemned him. He memorized them, one by one, not out of fear, but because if he lived, he would make them see him again. On the third waking, he noticed something strange. A shadow moved against the starfield, too slow for a meteor, too deliberate for debris. He pressed his face to the glass. The shape grew larger. No running lights, no visible engines, yet it was moving straight toward him. A sharp fear went through him. Maybe the coalition had sent hunters to finish the job, but as the craft drew closer, he saw marks on its hull, deep scars, as if it had survived countless battles. The metal was blackened in some places, almost melted in others. The ship looked alive in a way that made his skin crawl. It stopped beside his drifting vessel without sound. A section of its hull seemed to unfold like the petals of a flower, revealing a narrow docking tunnel. Something slammed onto his ship with a deep metallic thud. The air pressure shifted as the outer door unlocked. He backed away, ready to fight with his bare hands if he had to. The inner hatch slid open, and figures stepped through. They were not coalition soldiers. Their armor was heavier, their helmets marked with symbols he did not recognize, but their movements were slow, deliberate, and their eyes behind the visors locked on him with unsettling familiarity. One of them removed their helmet, revealing a weathered human face, scarred and pale. The man smiled as if meeting an old friend. "Captain Rion," he said. "Quietly, we've been looking for you for a very long time." Before Rion could speak, they stepped forward, gripping his arm. It's not as captors, but as people who had come for a purpose. He felt a strange chill run through him as they led him into their dark ship. The air smelled faintly of ozone and old battles. The doors closed behind him, cutting off the view of the stars. He realized then he was not dead. He was not saved. Either something else entirely was happening, and whatever it was, the galaxy would feel it soon. The ship that had taken him felt nothing like the polished corridors of coalition vessels. Its walls were dark metal, layered with marks of age and battle. The lighting was dim, as though the ship preferred shadows over brightness. Every step echoed, and the air carried a faint hum of power deep in its bones. The men and women who moved through the corridors wore armor that looked older than any he had seen yet. Each piece was well cared for. Their eyes followed him not with distrust, but with something heavier, as if they had been waiting for this moment far longer than made sense. They led him into a chamber that seemed to be the heart of the vessel. The walls curved high overhead, lined with consoles whose symbols were unfamiliar. At the center stood a table lit from beneath, showing a three-dimensional map of space. But not the one the Coalition used. These charts showed forgotten trade routes, dead systems, and territories, marked in red that no fleet dared to cross. The man who had first spoken to him removed his gloves and rested his hands on the table. His voice was calm, but it carried weight. "You are aboard the flagship of the Lost Fleet, Captain Rianta." Name struck him. It was a story whispered among soldiers back when he was a cadet, a legend of an entire human battle group that had vanished more than 200 years ago. During the First War with the Coalition, they were said to have been destroyed in an ambush, but some claimed they had gone dark, choosing to disappear rather than serve under alien command. He had never believed it until now the man confirmed it. They had gone into hiding, building strength in secret. While the galaxy forgot them, they had become ghosts unseen, yet watching. Rian wanted to know why they had come for him. The man explained the Lost Fleet had been searching for someone to lead them back into the open. Not just any leader, but one who had been burned by the Coalition and could carry the fire needed for war. They had watched his trials, seen the betrayal, and known he was the one they needed. Rian was not sure if it was fate or manipulation, but the thought of leading such a force made his blood stir still. He asked what they wanted him to do. Training began the next day. It was not like any military drill he had endured before. They taught him how to command fleets without leaving a trace, how to dismantle an enemy's economy without firing a shot, how to seed fear with rumors, till entire armies moved in the wrong direction. They showed him weapons so advanced they could blind a planet's sensors for days, and ships that could cross vast distances in the time it took a Coalition cruiser to charge its engines. His mind opened to strategies that were more like traps than battles at night in the narrow quarters they gave him. He thought about the council chamber, about the insect-eyed judge, and the worlds whose rulers had voted for his exile. He had memorized their names in the void. Now he studied their defenses, their allies, their weaknesses. With each passing day, he felt his anger sharpen into something colder and more precise. The Lost Fleet was not just giving him tools, they were shaping him into something the Coalition would never see coming. Weeks passed. The fleet moved through the deep black from hidden base to hidden base, avoiding detection like predators in tall grass. Rian grew familiar with the crews, learned their history, their losses, and their loyalty to one another. There were no politicians here, no councils, only warriors and builders who believed the Coalition's reign was ending. One evening, as they drifted in the shadow of a dead moon, the man who had found him came to stand beside him at the observation window. "The galaxy is ready to break," he said quietly. "All it needs is the right hand to push." Rian looked out at the scatter of stars, each one a world that had either turned its back on him or stood silent. When they could have spoken, his hands curled into fists. He knew the Coalition believed he was already dead. That gave him time and an advantage. He would use both. When he turned to the man beside him, his voice was steady. "Tell me where to start." And the answer that came was simple, but filled with promise. "The throne worlds where your name was erased from history, we will burn them back into memory." The alien capital was a city of light that never slept. Towers of glass and living crystal reached toward the sky, while rivers of fire-colored traffic streamed between them from orbit. It looked like a jewel, yet in the dark corners of its streets, fear had begun to grow. It started as whispers in the spaceport's captains speaking in low voices about merchant ships that never arrived at their destinations, about patrol craft drifting home with no crew on board. Then the rumors changed. Someone said a human was behind it. Someone else swore they had heard a voice on an open channel, promising judgment soon. The ruling council laughed at the idea. The human they had cast into the void could not possibly be alive. In the black between systems, The lost fleet moved like shadows. Rian stood at the center of their war table, its map glowing faint red. Every point of light represented a convoy or a patrol route. Coalition trade was a web stretched tight, and he knew exactly where to cut first. They would not strike the capital yet. Instead, they would make the ruling worlds feel their reach without understanding where it came from. His voice was low, but carried to every officer on the bridge. Remove their supplies, make their fleets starve. The first strike was silent. A convoy of 6 heavily guarded freighters, carrying refined fuel for the capital, vanished in deep space. The coalition sent search teams only for them to vanish as well. Not a single distress beacon was found days later. A military patrol returned limping with its hull torn and its crew locked in some kind of frozen trance. They spoke of black ships that appeared from nowhere and melted away like smoke. Rian allowed these survivors to live knowing they're terrified. Reports would spread faster than his own fleet ever could inside the Alien Council chamber debates. Grew heated. Some demanded all fleets be recalled to defend the throne worlds. Others wanted to hunt down the threat before it could grow the insectide. Judge, who had sentenced Rian, dismissed the stories as pirate attacks, but his voice shook slightly when he spoke. There was no proof, no name, only the gnawing thought that an enemy was moving unseen, across their most guarded routes from his flagship. Hidden in the dust of a dead star, Rian studied the effect. The coalition was already shifting fleets, leaving some systems unguarded. And that was exactly what he wanted. Fear made leaders make mistakes while his scouts mapped every weakness. The lost fleet began establishing hidden bases in abandoned mining stations and forgotten moons, each one stocked with weapons, fuel, and enough supplies to launch sudden strikes without warning. In his quarters, Rian laid out a separate map, not of the coalition's trade routes, but of its politics. Every world that had voted for his exile was marked in red. He traced a finger across them, slowly memorizing the order in which they would fall. It would not be random. The first target would be the one that hurt them most without destroying the coalition's unity too quickly. He wanted them to see him coming and be powerless to stop it. A coded message arrived from one of his infiltration teams inside the capital. They had intercepted private council transmissions. His name had been spoken again after months of silence, and it was spoken with fear. Rian allowed himself a thin smile. The galaxy thought him dead, but soon the worlds that betrayed him would know he was alive, and that he was coming for them. He stood at the observation window. The stars spread before him like prey in the dark, and he gave the order, begin Phase 2. It began with a voice that no one could trace at first, a faint signal slipping into every channel across the coalition. One moment, the airwaves were full of trade chatter and military orders, and the next, a single human voice cut through them. All calm, steady, and heavy with purpose. Judgment has come. By the time technicians scrambled to cut the broadcast, the words had already repeated 3 times. Every station, every ship, every home on Vorth Prime had heard it. Some dismissed it as a trick until the first defense satellites went dark from orbit. Vorth Prime was a masterpiece of wealth. Its cities shone in sprawling patterns, its sky filled with luxury cruisers and trade barges. Its rulers had grown fat on deals with half the galaxy, but they had also been the loudest voices calling for Rian's exile. Now they would pay the price. The lost fleet approached, cloaked in a haze of dust and electronic ghosts that blinded scanners. Rian's strike teams were already on the ground, moving like shadows through alleys and service tunnels, one by one. Power grids, failed turrets froze in place. Defense crews found their weapons refusing to fire. By the time the planetary fleet realized an attack was underway, it was already over. They scrambled ships into the sky, but found themselves facing enemies they could not track. Black shapes slipped through their formations, striking engines and bridge sections with surgical precision. Rian's flagship hung just beyond the clouds, its guns silent. The message was clear. He could end the planet if he wished, but destruction was not his aim. This was about something colder and far more lasting. In the grand tower of governance, the alien lords, who'd once laughed at his trial, now stood bound in their own council chamber. Rian had them dragged before the same recording devices they had used to condemn him. He let the galaxy see them beaten, stripped of their symbols of power, their eyes wide with the realization of who stood before them. He did not shout, he did not curse, he simply told the truth. They had betrayed justice for profit, and now the balance had shifted. The vaults of Vorth Prime were emptied not into his own hands but into the cargo holds of ships bound for colonies. The coalition had long ignored worlds starved of resources suddenly found themselves rich with supplies. Medical shipments and weapons appeared in rebel strongholds, and everywhere his name was whispered, not as a fugitive but as a liberator. He wanted the coalition to see the pattern, to fear that every act against him would be answered by their own people turning against them. The lost fleet finally withdrew. The capital of Vorth Prime lay intact but silent, the lights of its skyline dimmed, the wealth stripped from its masters, its people unsure whether they had been spared or conquered. The Alien Council's emergency meeting lasted for hours. Some argued that Rian was a pirate, others called him a revolutionary. But all agreed on one thing: he had struck a world at the very heart of their power and walked away untouched far from Vorth Prime. In the quiet shadow of an uncharted moon, Rian stood at the war table, his officers reporting the success of the mission. He marked the world off his list, one red mark. Gone, many more to go. This was only the beginning. The coalition thought they understood what war meant, but he was not waging war in the way they had prepared for. He was teaching them to fear him before they ever saw his fleet again, and fear he knew would make them fall faster than fire. One by one, the betrayer worlds began to burn. It did not happen with fleets clashing in open space or cities leveled by endless bombardment. It happened with precision, with silence, and with the same cold patience that had kept Rian alive in the void. His name now moved through the galaxy like a shadow. Some spoke it with awe, others with hate, but no one spoke it without fear. The second target fell in a single night. Its orbital docks were left drifting powerless, its ruling governor found locked inside his own command chamber, with every screen displaying the same message from Rian: "You voted for my death, now you live with the cost." There was no public execution, no grand destruction. The lost fleet stripped the world of its fuel reserves and left it in darkness. The coalition sent repair fleets only for them to vanish along the route. The third world was taken even faster by the time its rulers realized they were under attack. Half their defense network was already under Rian's control. His infiltration teams moved like smoke between the cities, cutting communications and seizing control of the planetary traffic grid. In the confusion, his fleet appeared overhead just long enough to broadcast a single image of their captured leaders before vanishing again. The message was spreading: the coalition could not protect those who had turned against him, and the more they tried, the weaker they looked in the council chambers. Panic replaced arrogance. They began pulling fleets from border systems to defend the inner worlds, leaving colonies. Exposed rebellions flared in places they had long ignored, and those rebellions found unexpected support. Small transports with no official markings began delivering weapons, food, and medicine to the uprising forces. The coalition suspected the truth but could prove nothing. Still, their intelligence reports all agreed the human they had left for dead was not just alive, he was building something larger in hidden sectors. The lost fleet swelled as deserters from alien navies and mercenary groups joined Rian's, because some came for revenge, others for the promise of freedom from the coalition's rule. Every new ship was refitted with the fleet's ghost technology, making them vanish from sensors as if they were never there. Rian accepted them all, but loyalty was demanded without question. Those who hesitated were sent away with a warning: this war would not be fought by the half-hearted. When the coalition finally tried to open negotiations, it was through secret channels, offering him a return of rank and wealth if he would end the attacks. Rian sent no reply. The only answer they received came days later, when their largest weapons foundry on a neutral world was destroyed in a single strike, leaving nothing but molten steel and silence. The message was clear: he could reach them anywhere, and he would not stop from the bridge of his flagship. Rian looked over the galactic map. Red marks still glowed where his betrayers remained, each one a promise not yet fulfilled. The Alien Council was breaking apart under the pressure. Old alliances crumbling as fear took hold. He had no intention of letting them recover. The lost fleet was no longer a hidden weapon. It was a storm rolling toward the heart of the coalition, and soon they would see that nothing they built could stand against it. The alien capital's sky was on fire. Streaks of light cut across the clouds as the coalition's last fleet fought to hold the line, but the outcome was already decided. Wyand's ships moved like predators through the chaos, their black holes gliding, past burning Rex weapons firing with surgical precision. Every defensive station that lit up was silenced within. Seconds, the lost fleet had come in full force, and nothing in the galaxy could stop them now. Inside the council chambers, the rulers, who had once looked down on him, sat in silence. Their walls shook with the impact of distant explosions. The insect-eyed judge. The chamber doors opened, and Rian stepped inside, clad in black battle armor, flanked by soldiers from every species that had once been oppressed under coalition rule. They had fought beside him, and now followed him without question. He walked to the center of the room and stopped, his helmet under one arm, his gaze sweeping across the council one by one. They looked away, unable to meet his eyes. Without speaking, he placed a small device on the table. A holographic contract flickered into the air. The terms were simple: surrender the worlds that had voted for his exile, relinquish control to the New Order, or face complete destruction. There was no bluff in his voice, and they knew it outside. Their fleets were falling, their defenses burning, their people crying for safety. One by one, the rulers signed, not out of loyalty, but survival. Rian did not celebrate. He only watched as centuries of arrogance crumbled before him. When the last signature was given, he turned and left the chamber, the new banners of the liberated worlds already hanging in the Great Hall. Galaxy expected him to rule with the same iron fist the Coalition had used, but Rian's first orders were different. The worlds taken from the Council were given their own assemblies, free to govern under the protection of the lost fleet. No tribute, no chains, only the promise that if the old rulers ever tried to reclaim them, he would return not as a liberator, but as a destroyer. His name would remain there. Shield from the throne once meant for alien kings, Rian stood looking over the city that had condemned him years ago. Now it belonged to him. The streets were alive with voices, not in fear but in hope. The message went out across the stars, carried by every free channel in the New Order: banish a human, and you had better pray they never come back. He turned from the view and walked back to his war table. The galaxy was vast, and though the Coalition had fallen, there were still powers who thought they could challenge him. He would meet them all in time. But for now, he owned the worlds that had betrayed him, and the stars were his to command.